This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Wednesday, hump day edition of the show. Hanging out with you, of course. 609-403-0973 is the text board to get on the conversation live here in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, we got Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg joined the show coming up. Just about, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. Get a little Eagles conversation. Get into what is going on with the Philadelphia Eagles, because they're hiring coaches, but are they the right coaches? Are they the good guys? Are they the guys that you should be bringing in? Well, we'll get into all that coming up with Dave Weinberg coming up as well. Of course, the text board is open. We are going to be on the stream in just a moment to hang out with all you guys out there. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also, we got Kevin McCormick live at the center tonight. He's up at the Wells Fargo Center, is Kevin McCormick. He'll be joining us again to Sixers, Lakers. You hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 7:30 tonight. Not 7 o'clock, 7:30, because it's on the ESPN television. So, you still have Tom McGinnis on the radio, as always, here on 97.3 ESPN, broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig here with you. And I'll get to the Eagles news in just a moment. We also got to talk a little bit more about the Sixers and, of course, the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I just want to let you know the full rundown here on 97.3 ESPN. So the Eagles have hired a quarterback coach, and you can see all the details over at 97.3 ESPN.com. We have the full information of the coaches who were hired today. But I got to start with the quarterback coach. I am actually very impressed. I am actually very intrigued that the Eagles have gone out and gotten this guy from Florida. Brian Johnson is one of the hottest young coaches in all of college football. And you guys know me. You know that I am somebody who watches a ton of college football. I watch a lot of college football. This guy is one of the up-and-coming stars in the game. He is a big-time up-and-comer right now. And I got to tell you guys, to get him to join the Eagles is a huge deal. Because, number one, this is a guy who worked with Dak Prescott. He worked with Kyle Trask. He made Eric DeKing. He brought him into as the starting quarterback of that team. So you're bringing in a guy who is not just some random dude from college, okay? This is not some nobody. This is more of a somebody than almost anybody else that they've hired. Not to belittle anybody else, but this guy is a big deal. And for you to bring him in tells you something about what this team plans to do moving forward. And part of what this team is trying to do moving forward is they're trying to evolve the offense. How many times have we ever heard the Eagles reporters, whether it's Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, Rob Motti's been on the Sports Bash, Dave Weinberg's been on with me. They've all talked about the same thing. Jeffrey Lurie has this obsession with offense. He's always been this guy who wants to have the best offense, a great offense, an offense that is high-powered, etc. So for the Eagles, to get Brian Johnson is a sign that they're not going to be a vanilla offense anymore. This is not going to be an offense that is the same thing you've seen every single year. Brian Johnson is bringing in a guy who understands what it means to coach mobile and not mobile quarterbacks. Kyle Trask was not really a runner. He was athletic, but he wasn't a legitimate running ability quarterback. But he also coached up Dak Prescott. So he understands how to coach the two different quarterback types. And I know a lot of people out there are pointing to the fact that Brian Johnson has a long history with Jalen Hurts since he was a child. I highly doubt that Brian Johnson is here just because of Jalen Hurts. Do you think that that's why South Carolina and Boise State both talked to this guy? Do you think that's why Houston hired him to be their offensive coordinator a couple of years ago under Major Applewhite before Applewhite was fired? Do you think that's the reason why that he got jobs at Mississippi State and Florida with Dan Mullins? No. He gets the jobs because he's a really good coach. He understands how to play the position. He understands how to play at a high level. Remember, he was the quarterback at Utah when they beat Alabama. So don't get it twisted. This guy is not here just because of Jalen Hurts. Maybe the connection was a tiny bit helpful. But if Carson Wentz is able to get his head on straight and go out there and have a good season, it's not like Brian Johnson is going to go out there and undermine him. This is his first NFL job. This is his first shot at getting to the big show. He ain't going to waste it. So for Sirianni, he's gotten one of the hottest defensive coaches in the league. Jonathan Gannon was a desired a commodity around the entire league. There were talks he could go to the Bears, or talks he could go to the Chargers. He ended up with the Eagles. You get one of the hottest young coaches in college football, Brian Johnson. You get the guy in Shane Steichen who coached up Justin Herbert to a great rookie season despite everything that would have been against them. It might not be the sexiest coaching staff. It might not be the most exciting coaching staff, but it's a legitimate coaching staff. And I think we got to give the Eagles credit for at least getting something right. We may not love them firing Doug Peterson. We may not love some of these things, but at least got to give them credit for getting some legitimate coaches in here. It'll be interesting to see, though, where they go with the rest of the staff, because so far it's just a lot of guys that either Sirianni knows or people who are hot commodities. Anthony Lynn is the offense coordinator in Detroit. All right, what does that mean? I don't know. It seems like Dan Campbell is just trying to find anybody who's anybody in the league to join his staff at this point. I don't know if Dan Campbell, honestly, is coaching a football team or he's building a WWE roster the way he talks at press conferences. But I think we got to give Sirianni some credit in the Eagles for what they're doing here. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday will join us coming up at 6:15 tonight. Also, Kevin McCormick live from the center. We have the Sixers versus the Lakers, 7:30 tonight on 97.3 ESPN. We got a message from somebody watching on YouTube, 973 ESPN on YouTube. Or also you'll watch on Twitter, Facebook, and also on the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Sports back to Mike Gill and Hunter Brody, as well as Game Night with Josh. And we got you covered on all platforms here on 97.3 ESPN. Vincent asks, who's going to draft in the front office for us, though? Well, Vincent, listen, it's still Howie Roseman who's up there. And I know there's a perception that Howie Roseman doesn't know what he's doing. Listen, unless you can name somebody in the NFL who is so much better than Howie Roseman, you got to, for lack of a better term, trust the process. You got to let this thing play out. The last time Howie Roseman had this high of a pick, he took Carson Wentz. The time before that, they took Lane Johnson. It's not like they're drafting Jamarcus Russell year in, year out. Have the Eagles made mistakes in the draft? 100%. But how many times do we hear, well, that's a Joe Douglas guy. That's a Joe Douglas pick. There's this ambiguity about where is the draft board coming from? Who makes the draft board? Is it Howie? Is it Douglas? Is it Weidel? Who is it? Dorsey isn't here anymore. I don't know what that means. There's all these variables that go into this stuff. So when you ask who's going to draft in the front office for us, Vincent, I understand the insinuation. The insinuation is that Howie Roseman is a problem, or maybe the problem. But guess what? Howie Roseman is just like every other NFL GM. You think Belichick gets every pick right in New England? You think that Rick Spielman gets every pick right in Minnesota? You think Les Snead gets every pick right in Los Angeles? John Elway, who used to be the GM in Denver, he doesn't get every pick right. That's for darn sure. He drafted Paxton Lynch, for goodness sake. Howie Roseman did win a Super Bowl here. So I'm not saying the guy's great. I'm not saying I'm a fan, but I'm saying little context. We get the 6th overall pick. We're putting together a legitimate NFL coaching staff that doesn't involve guys like Press Taylor and Corey Unlin on the staff. I'm at least going to give the Eagles a chance to show me whether they got it or not. Listen, you all heard me for weeks. I ripped Carson Wentz mercilessly for weeks. If someone needs to be ripped, I will go off on them. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Mike in Marmora chimes in and mentioned the fact that there was a Philadelphia media reporter trying to make the connection between Brian Johnson and Hurst. Listen, it wasn't just him. It was another couple people, too, who were trying to make that connection, Mike and Marmora. It wasn't just him. It was a couple other people. I'm not going to say his name on the air because, this is the perception of certain people in the media, I think, is blown out of proportion sometimes. There's one person who is visible on Twitter and on social media and at press conferences, and there's another person who they are behind the scenes. And let me tell you something. Some of the people who you think are great, they're not great people behind the scenes. Some people that you maybe hate are actually some of the better human beings behind the scenes. So just keep that in mind when you think about who these guys are or they not. Because, listen, people report things all the time. And they're going to make opinions. They're going to make connections. It's just part of the game. So, but I appreciate you listening, Mike and Marmore, and chiming in here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. It's a Weinberg Wednesday. We'll ask Dave Weinberg his thoughts on the Eagles as they proceed to continue building their new coaching staff. Coming up here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle and live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll go back to your text in just a bit at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Of course, you can watch the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 973 ESPN. But right now, we're going to go to the Boardwalk on the hotline as promised. Weinberg Wednesday. That means Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer, joins us each week here on 97.3 ESPN. Check out all his extra point columns over at 97.3ESPN.com, at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Dave, how you doing this Wednesday?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So Nick Sirianni is the head coach. I want to get your thoughts on that because I think that a lot of people, the initial reaction was, who the heck is this guy? And as time is going on, I don't know, the fact that he hasn't spoken yet, I don't know if that's helping the perception of this new guy coming to town.
Yeah, I'm not real sure what to expect, Josh. I mean, I'm like you. I don't really know a whole lot about him. I still don't. I was of the opinion that they should have hired Deuce Staley, and that hasn't changed. But yeah, evidently that's not going to work. So Deuce is off to Detroit. I wish him the best, and hopefully he'll get that opportunity that he deserves somewhere down the line. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot of. I've read some stuff. I've heard some stuff about him, and I guess Jeffrey and Howie know what they're doing. I mean, but they're the type of people that always like to prove that they're like the smartest guys in the room, if you will. They like to go outside the box a little bit, it seems like, and this is definitely outside the box. So we'll see if it works out.
What's interesting about the hire is that all the guys out, there's really almost everyone he's hired, he's worked with at some point. You know, whether it's Gannon
right.
in Indianapolis, Steichen from the Chargers. So, I mean, okay, it's great you're hiring a bunch of guys that you're familiar with and you're comfortable with, but that doesn't help anybody else be confident in them as well. And I'm not against them. I'm willing to give the guy an opportunity to show if he's good or bad. But there's a level to this where it seems like I don't need the sexy hire, Dave, but I need a hire who is not going to take me a bunch of work to do research on him, and people are depending on listening to people like us to actually know anything about them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I guess he wanted to go with who he's comfortable with, the guys that he's worked with before and knows what to expect from them. I'm not so sure. It seems like other coaches tend to keep like a file almost on guys that they either admire or they respect or they've worked with or they've coached against and thought a lot about them. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how far outside of his comfort level he's willing to go with some of the coaches. The best move they made though was retaining Jeff Stoutland as the offensive line coach. He's he's well regarded throughout the league as one of the best, and the fact that he's staying and then being able to work with some of the younger guys and the veterans, that's going to help them definitely.
When you think about what the Eagles have done in the past, and Jeffrey, you mentioned Jeffrey Lurie's gone down this road before of hiring the new guy, the no-name guy, the whatever you want to call them guy. There is a part of me that does wonder when I look at this organization. I wonder if this is almost like them trying to it's almost like they're trying to prove that they were right all along. Like this whole thing with the coaching staff. Remember, you've heard all the stories. We talked about it before about, Doug Peterson apparently wanted Press Taylor, right? And Jeffrey Lurie didn't want Press Taylor to be the offensive coordinator. So it's like, all right, well, if that's the case, then is this almost them trying to go out there and say, see, we're going to hire the guy, and this is the guy you should have had all along kind of attitude?
Yeah, that might be. Everybody's making a big deal about him hiring his own guys, but I can assure you that he had to get Jeffrey and Howie's permission before he hired his offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, or what have you. So yeah, it's gonna. I don't know. I can't believe that they would give him that kind of authority and not give Doug the same kind of respect, especially the guy won a Super Bowl for you. It seems like he should have been given the benefit of the doubt as far as retaining coaches, promoting coaches, hiring coaches, firing coaches. And that level of respect just wasn't there for Doug for whatever reason. I don't know why. So, it's nice that he was able to, I guess he was given some latitude to bring in his own guys, but I find it very hard to believe that Jeffrey and Howie didn't sign off on it or give their permission, so to speak, first.
Absolutely. And there's actually a couple of reports out there that apparently Jeffrey Lurie was very well aware who Jonathan Gannon was, and he was somebody that potentially the Eagles could have tried to get as their defensive coordinator either way. So you kind of have to wonder, when Sirianni made his presentation, he brought up Gannon's name, that maybe that was part of the reason why he moved to the front of the line the way he did, because maybe Lurie was already had his eye on certain coordinator candidates, and he was waiting for a head coach to come in there and offer the name of the guy that he was looking for.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know how Jeffrey Lurie would know that. I don't know. Maybe Frank Wright kind of tripped him off, maybe about Gannon. But yeah, that's probably there's probably some truth to that. That maybe Jeffrey was kind of waiting to hear the right things, and this guy was able to tell him what he wanted to hear.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him at Dave Weinberg 19. Check out his extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, one more thing on the Eagles before we move on to a couple other things. I know a lot of people are starting to look forward to the NFL draft, and I got to ask you, if someone was asking you who they should pick in the 6th pick in the NFL draft, where would you go? What does a Dave Weinberg think of what the Eagles should do with 6 overall?
It depends who's there. I mean, if Chase or Devontae Smith are there, I guess I go with one of those two guys. But if not, I think I go with Patrick Surtain, the corner from Alabama. They really need a shutdown corner that they don't have. And I think that he'd be the guy that would really solidify that secondary. A young guy, very talented, a lot of potential. And I think I might go with him. I've heard talk that they might, trade down and try and get some more picks. That's certainly a possibility too, I guess. But I would think I would go with the corner or one of those two wide receivers if they're there.
See, my opinion is I would go with Surtain either way, because I just feel like you can't bypass a blue chip player like that. I feel like those guys only come, once in a while. And let's be realistic. When was the last time the Eagles had two legitimately high-level starting corners? What was it? Lito and Sheldon, basically?
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, you're right there. Yep, it's been a while. Yeah, Lito and Sheldon are probably the last tandem. I mean, they were kind of lucky for a while. They had Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor, and then Asante Samuel, and now Lito, and then Lito and Sheldon, like you said. But yeah, it's been a while, and that was like by 2002, 3, 4, around that area. So they've got some catching up to do. But pairing this guy with Darius Slay, that would certainly be a step in the right direction.
Dave, I want to flip it over to something that I think you and I are both passionate about, which is when it comes to baseball. And I'm not as passionate as you are about baseball, but I am passionate about the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I was honestly disgusted with what happened yesterday. I think that, first of all, for 14 people to send in blank ballots, that's a disgrace. I think that that's a disrespect to the system. It's a disrespect to the game. And they should have their votes revoked because, people can argue all they want about who should or shouldn't get in. But you have the opportunity to have that ballot for a reason. And we can argue all day long about who should or shouldn't be in, but to send in nothing at all just screams just childish spite to me.
Yeah, there's too many guys there that I guess they wanted to make a statement. I don't know, but I'm with you 100%. It's ridiculous. Regardless of, like I wrote on Twitter, regardless of your personal feelings about a player or what have you, you can't let that cloud your judgment when it comes to the Hall of Fame. There are guys on that ballot that deserve to be in there, and for you not to elect anybody, not to vote for anyone, that's a disgrace.
And listen, I know there are a couple of people they only voted for 2 people. Like there was one guy he voted for Omar Vizquel and Billy Wagner, which gave me a good laugh when I saw that ballot yesterday. But listen. I know some people feel like Schilling should or shouldn't be in. There's people who are for and against the PED guys. But at some point, people forget that this is a museum, right, Dave? Like this is about the history of the game. It's not a hall of morality. It's not a hall of who I like or dislike. It's a history museum and tells the history of the game. And I think that some of these voters, they overlook that reality.
Yeah, this is just me talking, but I'm of the opinion that Bonds and Clemens, they should have been on long. They should have been in long ago.
I'm with you.
Granted, the clouds of steroids will forever be over their heads, but those guys were great players even before they reportedly used that stuff. So they deserve to be in, and I'm having a hard time understanding why Curt Schilling isn't in. I know he's understandably frustrated. He has to be taken off the ballot, but I in no way endorse his political leanings or his, rants or what have you. And for him to support what happened, at the Capitol building is absolutely disgraceful. But you can't let your political leanings affect what he did on the field. And the guy was an unbelievable pitcher, especially in the postseason. I think he went like 11-2 combined, and for his career in the postseason. So, to me, that's a Hall of Fame pitcher, and I don't understand why he wasn't on the ballot or wasn't voted in.
Yeah, and he only fell 16 votes short. It wasn't like he was that far down the list compared to other voters.
Right.
Listen, I think you're right. I think that his post-career, rantings on social media, whether people like or dislike them.
He's a nut job. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
But the thing is that guess what? You know who's in the Hall of Fame? Ty Cobb's in the Hall of Fame. Ty Cobb was a racist, bigot scumbag who beat women and gave money to the KKK. That guy's in the Hall of Fame. Is not the hall of morality. We're acting like these guys are supposed to be angels who walk in there. They're baseball players.
Right. I'll respectfully disagree with you about Ty Cobb. I think a lot of that stuff was myth that kind of got blown out of proportion. That wasn't even true. But if you're certainly entitled to your opinion. But yeah, there's guys in there that have done nefarious things, if you will, and that really should. Babe Ruth wasn't exactly an angel, and Mickey Mantle, same thing. But those guys, they were outstanding players. They were Hall of Fame players, and that's where you have to go. Ultimately, that's the determining factor. Was the guy the best player or among the best players of his era? And if so, then he should be in, no matter what he did off the field. That really shouldn't matter.
I'll go back to what you said about Bonds and Clemens. I want to touch on that a little more because I agree with you, and this is something we can agree on. I feel like those guys were Hall of Famers before they ever took anything, whatever exactly they took. Only God really knows between them and God. But listen, those guys, those PEDs didn't make them Hall of Famers. Like you said, they were Hall of Famers before they touched anything. And the thing with Bonds is the reason why he took the PEDs, has been documented, is that he was so angry that McGwire and Sosa stole his shine.
Correct.
That he had this attitude of like, oh, you want to see PEDs? Watch this. And in a strange, irreverent way, I respect that, because it's like the guy was like, well, this is where the game is going. I'm gonna keep up with the Joneses. And baseball history is full of people who have quote unquote cheated. Spitballs, corked bats. And I know PEDs are on a different level. I know people feel like it's a completely different level of advantage, but we're not talking about Jason Grimsley, who was on the Mitchell Report. We're talking about Bonds and Clemens, two guys. I mean, Clemens had the 20 strikeout games before he ever took anything, and Bonds had 40 home runs and 400 home runs and 400 stolen bases before he ever took anything.
Yeah, I mean, as a Giants fan, I've long regarded Bonds as the best player in the game, even before he started taking things. And you're right; it was purely like he wanted to slap the face. It was a slap in the face to baseball. That he was like, you're right. He was so angry and frustrated at all the attention that McGwire and Sosa got, that he just took it to the next level. He said, "Look, I'm the best player in the game. Let me show you." And started smacking home runs like every other at bat almost. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm with you. I think both of those guys were outstanding players even before they allegedly took what they took. And you're also right about this has been a part of baseball for as long as baseball's existed, really. I mean, I know you're way too young to remember, but there was a famous book called Ball 4 that Jim Bouton wrote about baseball in the 70s, and there was all kinds of stuff. People were taking, speed and all that, all the other stuff, greenies. And, that's everybody's always looking for an edge. And this is no different. And I just don't get why that's keeping these guys out of the Hall of Fame. I don't know why. I don't know where the voters get off being so righteous about this stuff.
It is funny because you look at the other sports with Hall of Fames, whether it's football or whether it's basketball. And I'm not saying baseball needs to be like basketball. They let like everybody and their cousin in. But, I feel like the other sports understand the purpose of a Hall of Fame better. And that is that the Hall of Fame is meant to tell the history of the game, honor the best players in the game. And part of telling the history of the game is showing the game for all of its positives and weaknesses. You can't tell the history of baseball without Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, this is not the Hall of Very Good. This is the Hall of Fame, and these guys were at the top echelon of players when they were playing. They were the best in the game, and they deserve to be rewarded for that. I don't understand what they're thinking. I never will.
Dave, we got an interesting question here. I want to throw it to you over on somebody watching on Facebook, our conversation right now. Paul wants to know, will one of the 2008 Phillies eventually make it in the Hall of Fame? I think that's a very interesting question because you have two guys who won MVPs, and then you have the one guy who didn't win the MVP, some people thought was the best player on the team, being Utley.
That's going to be a really tough call. I don't think Ryan Howard gets in because I don't think he did it for a long enough time. He had a couple of years where he was really, really good, but he kind of fell off the map after that. Jimmy's probably closer than Utley, I think. Like you said, he has the MVP to his credit. If I were going to vote for any of those three, it would be Jimmy Rollins. But again, I'm not sure that he was the best at his position at the time. And to me, that's kind of how I weigh it. I mean, I don't have a vote, but I look at the ballot and I say, okay, was this guy the best third baseman of his era? Was this guy the best shortstop of his era? What have you? If you think that Jimmy was, then yes, certainly vote for him. I'm just fervently hoping that Dick Allen finally gets his just due and gets into the Hall of Fame. I think that's a travesty that he's not in yet.
Well, you and I both know that'll fall to the Veterans Committee for them to iron that out because that's kind of where some of those guys actually get in.
Right.
So some of the guys who were supposed to get, like Jim Rice, had to wait till the very last year on the ballot to get in, which was an embarrassment just because writers didn't like him. So, we know how some of this stuff works. That there's politics that goes into this.
Oh yeah, that's why I don't get how. Supposedly it's a big deal. Mariano Rivera was the first unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer, from what I understand. Right.
Right.
You're going to tell me that he's the first player that deserved to be a Hall of Fame. You tell me Willie Mays was not deserving of the first ballot Hall of Fame, or Mickey Mantle or Ted Williams or Nolan Ryan or, just take your pick of guys who were just, icons of the game. And why is it such a big deal to leave somebody off your ballot just because you don't want to be a unanimous pick? If you think he's the best in the game, then vote for him, for crying out loud.
Dave, one more before I let you go. I want to stick with baseball here for this question. And Paul, thanks for the question over there watching on Facebook. Hank Aaron passed away a few days ago, and I want to ask you about that. When you go back, someone like me who didn't live through it, I go back and watch the games on like ESPN Classic, let's say, or, I'm going through the, Ken Burns baseball or, someone like me. I look back on Hank Aaron's career. My biggest takeaway is, why don't we talk about him enough as the greatest player to ever live?
I don't know that he was, but he was certainly one of the best. I mean, I was lucky enough to have grown up when I did. Being a kid and falling in love with baseball in the '60s. That was the era of Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle and Roberto Clemente, Bob Gibson, Sandy Koufax. I mean, I was lucky enough to see the best of the best, and that, and Hank was certainly, right near the top of the list. I don't know that he was all, the best player. I mean, that could be debated, whatever, for whatever preferences you have as far as the best. But I mean, there's no arguing that he was in the top five. And, I don't know what, maybe it was his personality. He didn't, he was very quiet, very humble. Yeah, but people always recognize him as being the home run king for so long. Some people still recognize him as that, but I mean, he had 4,000 hits. Besides that,
and he was a switch hitter. Don't people forget about that? He was hitting from both sides of the plate.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was an amazing player. And it wasn't just like everybody thought of him as a power hitter, and he wasn't really that big. But yeah, there was so. I mean, he'd stolen bases, doubles, triples, whatever. Defensively, he was an all around stud.
Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Check his extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. And don't forget about his podcast, Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. As all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Dave, always appreciate the time and the conversation, even when we agree or disagree.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Real quick, make sure you check out Isaiah Selden from Atlantic City. He's fighting on Fox on Saturday night.
Yeah, regular Fox or FS1?
Regular
Fox. That's this Saturday, right?
Yep. Starting at 8.
There you go. Dave Weinberg, I'm sure you're going to have something to write about that too, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. Dave Weinberg, Hall of Fame boxing writer, joined us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Always love picking Dave's brain about baseball too, because he understands the history of the game. And I feel like so many times people don't have context for things, and Dave brings a lot of context to the table when it comes to the Eagles and baseball. So great stuff from him on a Weinberg Wednesday. Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. We'll go up to the center next. Kevin McCormick is live for Sixers versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Coverage begins tonight at 7:30 here on 97.3 ESPN. To get on the conversation, 609-403-0973 is text board. And, of course, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter is where you can watch the show. Josh Hennig live here in the Matt Black Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Get to your text a little bit later in this segment at 609-403-0973, plus your messages on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, watching at 973 ESPN. But joining us right now to get more into the Sixers game coming up tonight, you hear all the action right here on 973 ESPN at 7:30. Kevin McCormick is live at the center for Sixers versus Lakers, 7:30. Tom McGinnis on the call, but Kevin McCormick joins us right now on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Kevin, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So let's get into this game a little bit. But to start, we got to go back a little bit. When you and I last talked on Monday, we both knew that this game was going to be in the kind of like the out view, right? This game was always going to be on the horizon. I think you and I both agreed that the assumption is that, listen, no matter what happened in the Pistons game, this was the game. This was the measuring stick. How much do you think, though, that impacted what we saw on Monday night?
I think it impacted it a lot. After seeing the kind of output that the Sixers put out, especially with no Joel Embiid playing, Ben Simmons only played about 20 minutes due to foul trouble. We saw a lot more from guys like Tony Bradley and Isaiah Joe, who don't typically play on, in the regular rotation. So for the most part, it really did look like Doc Rivers kind of punted that game, and they played like a team that was looking more ahead to this game than they were kind of in the moment.
I think I was very disappointed in Ben and Dwight. I mean, I don't know what was going on with Dwight on Monday night. And I'm not just disappointed because he lost me a little bit of money. But, Dwight is a guy that, he's played a certain way all year long. And then on Monday night, he goes out there and has a dud. Like you said, Simmons in the foul. Well, they have 26, 28 personal fouls in that game. It just felt like the entire game got away from them. But there was one guy who did play well. And we got to highlight that. How about Tobias Harris? I mean, this guy over the last month has really shown up and shown out. And we got to give this guy credit. How many times did you and I see on social media, Tobias is a bum, Tobias can't play, Tobias is overpaid? Well, all of a sudden, he's becoming this guy you can't live without.
Even in the beginning of the season, he kind of had a slow start to the year, and everyone, went back into that same old song and dance of, oh, he's overpaid, and, Doc Rivers isn't going to be able to fix him and stuff like that. But without a doubt, he's absolutely turned it on. The news has come that the NBA is planning for an all-star game this season, and Tobias Harris could really be in that conversation. Another thing that we've talked about a lot when I've come on with you before games is just how solid Tobias Harris has been and just being a legitimate second option for this team. And like you just said, he's been phenomenal. He's been on a tear this month. He's shooting career highs from the field and from three. And as much as you can say Joel Embiid's really been carrying the Sixers, if Tobias Harris isn't playing at the level that he is, this Sixers team doesn't look as lethal as they have been.
When you think about Tobias Harris, what do you think his potential is? Is it what we're seeing right now? Do you think there's more for him to go? Do you think there's more that we could see from Tobias down the road?
It's so hard to say just because of how efficient he's been shooting the ball. It's so hard to say if he'll be able to eclipse the, near 50, 40, 90 status that he's at right now. But if he can maintain this level of play and still give what he's giving on the defensive end, as much as people want to talk about his scoring and his efficiency, Tobias Harris is also averaging close to or over a steal and block a game. So how far he's come defensively is another part of just how great he's been this season. But in terms of the level, I would say this has to be close to the ceiling of what he's going to give, and that's okay.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at KevinMCC973. He is at the center tonight for Lakers and Sixers. You can see all the pregame warm-up videos on his Twitter feed at KevinMCC973. Joining me here on 97.3 ESPN on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin, let's go into the game tonight. We know Embiid is supposed to be back tonight, and I thought the one comment that Doc Rivers said to you guys in the media about Embiid, he said that he's comfortable with Joel going against anyone. Quote, I'll take Joel one-on-one in the post with anyone, unquote. I think it's interesting because there's a possibility we see the infamous Marc Gasol tonight. So, that's a guy that's given him a lot of trouble over the years. But Doc seems to feel like Embiid has stepped beyond that. What do you think about the coach's confidence in his star player?
I think it's warranted just because if you look at Joel Embiid's entire season, granted it's a short sample, they've only played about 15 games, but there's yet to be a defensive matchup where a center has been able to slow Embiid down. And Marc Gasol was brought up in the pregame. That's why Doc Rivers went into that little rant about how he feels that Joel's play has been. And there's no denying that Marc Gasol has been a guy that's slowed down Embiid in the past, but the Joel Embiid that Marc Gasol has slowed down in the past is not the Joel Embiid that's getting ready to step on the court tonight. He has reached a new level in fitness and his game and his ability to pass. So although Gasol has had his success in the past, I think we see a new page from Embiid tonight in their little matchup.
When you think about also this matchup, I know everyone's focused on LeBron James. What about Anthony Davis? How much of a game is this for the Sixers to make sure that Anthony Davis doesn't have a huge game, because I feel like LeBron's always going to have a great night, right? He's LeBron. I mean, you're not going to fully stop him. But Anthony Davis, how much is that in the back of the Sixers' mind?
I would have to say it has to be in the front of their mind, right next to LeBron James, just because when you look at Anthony Davis, he is another guy who's a top 10 player in the NBA right now. He can just as much go off for a dominant performance as LeBron can. So, taking care of him as well as slowing down LeBron James needs to be a focus. I think this is going to be a big chance for Ben Simmons to kind of show on a grand scale just how versatile and great of a defender he is in the NBA right now, and, keep solidifying that potential Defensive Player of the Year campaign.
You mentioned that MVP campaign. Let's touch on that a little bit when it comes to Joel Embiid. I think more and more people are coming on to the conversation about Embiid, but there's a pushback, and it's coming from the West Coast, and it's because of LeBron. It's because of the season he's having. It's because there were people, like myself, who thought last year that LeBron should have won the MVP instead of Giannis, and I think that some of those people are carrying over their attitude that LeBron could have won last year and bringing it into this year, even though you could argue that some of his numbers are maybe not as gaudy as they were last year, but his efficiency is up. But so is Embiid. So whose efficiency has been more impressive to you? Is it the big man or is it the future legend?
That's so tough to choose from. For both of them, the crazy thing that stands out is they're both near 40% three-point shooters. So in that case, I think I'd have to give the edge to LeBron right now, just because we've seen Embiid be a reliable shooter from the floor and have these dominant stints at time. But for the fact that LeBron James in year 18 has been able to increase his efficiency from three to, I think he's almost shooting as many shots from three as he is inside the lane right now. So, and for LeBron to up that part of his game at this phase of his career is, I would say, more remarkable than Embiid stepping up and inserting what is the prime of his career.
So then who's your MVP then between the two of them? If the season ended tomorrow and you had to pick.
I would have to say Joel Embiid, mainly because for the whole LeBron thing, you could say there's been 5 or 6 seasons where he's been robbed of an MVP award. But the one thing we talked about one night was the narrative aspect of it. And I think with Joel Embiid playing at the level he's been, and you can create that whole narrative of the return of the big man in the NBA and the emphasis of, unicorn centers like Joel Embiid, with that backing him, I think could give him the edge along with the resurgence of the Sixers this season.
Kevin McCormick live up at the center for Sixers Lakers at 7:30 is the tip tonight. You hear all the action on 97.3 ESPN. Follow Kevin for all the Sixers and NBA coverage over at Kevin MCC 973 on Twitter. For all your Sixers and NBA coverage, I'll check out his pregame and postgame thoughts on every Sixers game at 97.3 ESPN.com. Kevin, one more before I let you go, and I always appreciate you jumping on the show. When you look at this game as well tonight, the Sixers people are saying, listen, this is the toughest test of the year. This is a measuring stick game. What is the one thing that you are looking for? If there were one or two things you could isolate on and say, I need to see this from this team tonight, what is it?
I would have to say it's seeing the Sixer stars go toe-to-toe with the Lakers stars, just because, as we know, it's a star-driven league. Stars kind of drive the NBA right now. And in terms of contending teams, it's always looked at as the top. So if guys like Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris can go toe-for-toe with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and kind of negate their performance, or cancel them out, I guess would be a better word, is something I would like to see. It's one thing we saw when these teams matched up last year. Tobias and Ben played phenomenal in that Sixers win. And then another thing I want to see is just, I guess, surviving. I feel like this is a very winnable game for the Sixers, and it's really going to come down to keeping it close in the end, because Doc Rivers said pregame he's liked the grit that this team has showed in fourth quarters. And I think if the Sixers can survive and keep this game close towards the end, that it just ups their chances of being able to come up with stops at the end and really come out with a statement win.
He's Kevin McCormick, our Sixers beat writer for 97.3 ESPN.com. Again, Kevin, MCC973 on Twitter for all of his coverage. 7:30 tip tonight. You hear all the action here on 97.3 ESPN. As all guests, he appear on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin, always appreciate the time and the conversation. Enjoy the game tonight, all right?
Thanks, Josh. You take care.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Game Night being brought to you by weightliftinghq.com. My friends over at weightliftinghq.com are located right here in South Jersey. They deliver to your home quickly, fast, efficient, whatever you need, whether it's a squat and bench rack, kettlebells, dumbbells, cardio and fitness machines, whatever you need, they have it over at weightliftinghq.com. They will set it up at your home. They deliver it to your home. And right now, you can get 10% off with my promo code Radio10 at checkout. That's 10% off with Radio10 at checkout at weightliftinghq.com. Whether you're someone who can't make it to the gym because you're so busy working from home with family, or maybe you're someone who just is not comfortable going to the gym because of everything that's going on in the world, weightliftinghq.com is here to help you meet all of your health and fitness goals in 2021. Weightliftinghq.com is the website. The promo code is Radio10 for 10% off your entire order. Let's get a couple people over here on listening to the show. We got Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Want to say hello to you folks a little bit before I give you my my FanDuel Sportsbook pick for the night. A couple people in here. Hello, Ryan. Ryan just says hello. That's all he said on YouTube. Hello, Ryan. We got over here Jeff checking in on the YouTube feed as well. It says Hank Aaron should have a bioepic. Real talk, though. And I like the way you said that, Jeff, because Hank Aaron's life is so incredibly unique. And if you're going to have a bioepic about him, it's got to be something a little deeper than your traditional bioepic. I need the good and the bad. I need the light and the dark. I need the whole 9 yards. I need the whole spectrum of the man's life. I don't just want to hear the good stuff or just hear the bad stuff. I want to hear it all. You know, when you look at someone's life like Joe Frazier, people don't talk about the things that he went through personally, the things that he went through outside of the ring. People just talk about his wars with Muhammad Ali and the fact that he only had a handful of losses in his career. But there was way much more to a guy like Joe Frazier than just what you heard through certain people's eyes. There's so much more to him. So I'm with you. If you're going to have a bioepic, it's got to be real talk. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll give you my FanDuel Sportsbook pick for the night right now before we get out of here. So here's the deal. I'm looking at a specific game tonight, and we did okay yesterday. You know, the DFS pick didn't work out, but a couple other picks did. We covered the spread last night on the Hawks and the Clippers, as well as the Rockets and Wizards games. So gut instinct, gut move here. I think that the Heat covered the 6.5 spread versus the Nuggets. I know there's still no Jimmy Butler. I know there's still concerns about who's actually playing for Miami in this game. But realistically, the only guys that have been ruled out are Miles Leonard and Tyler Hero. I think that Bam Adebayo can have a huge game. I think Dragic contributes. I think that they lose by a handful. And don't forget, the Nuggets, they're on a long road trip. They might be a little tired tonight. Josh Hennig here on Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.